Pawnstars is without a doubt an entertaining show that showcases impressive bargaining skills to maximize profits. But hey, it ain't always a walk in the park. Sometimes they end up with losses that hit them harder than a sledgehammer. But on the flip side, there are those rare moments when they strike gold and make insane profits. Not just doubling or tripling their cash, but making a mind-blowing 10 times the dough. And these were the moments when Pawnstars hit the damn lottery. Just a normal fine day when this guy walks into the pawn shop to sell Les Paul's document collection, including an incredibly unique and world's one-of-a-kind Les Paul SG guitar that belonged to his Aunt Mary. And guess what? She wasn't just some guitar lover or a casual Les Paul fan.
Aunt Mary just a guitar fan, or?
No, Les Paul's wife.
This belonged to Mary Ford?
Mary Ford.
Yes, you heard him right. She was actually Mary Ford, the wife of the legendary Les Paul himself. Pretty surprising, right? Les Paul is practically a legend in the music world. He's known for creating the Log, which was one of the earliest electric guitars, and he held patents for various innovations in pickups, amplifiers, and pretty much everything related to electric guitars. In the 1950s, Les Paul and Mary Ford topped the charts with over a dozen #1 hits and sold millions upon millions of records. The documents included in the collection consist of correspondence between Les Paul and his manager, as well as his signed contracts. No doubt the pawn shop literally hit the jackpot with this collection. You might be wondering why someone would sell such a rare item. Unfortunately, it's because Mary's nephew had some debts to pay off. So the seller is hoping to get $250,000 for this collection. The big question is it really worth that much? And is it still in good enough condition to fetch a high price? Let's find out. Rick Harrison calls for Drew, the expert from Authentic Autographs Unlimited, who specializes in forensic document examination. He then carefully examines the signature on the guitar and remarks that Les Paul had a unique and straightforward signature style. Interestingly, Drew notes that he never included his last name when signing autographs. He goes on to say,
"All right, well, you got a fantastic collection here. I don't see any evidence really of a secretarial. The consistency of the first name is right where we want it to be."
Afterward, Rick contacts Jesse, the proprietor of Cowtown Guitars. Just with one look at the guitar, and Jesse's jaw dropped to the floor.
You know what it's worth? Wow. This is amazing. I can't even believe I'm holding this in my hands. Mary Ford's Les Paul, this is absolutely crazy.
And the most exciting part is that this old damn guitar works. Nah, scratch that. It frickin' rocks.
All right, so it works?
Yeah, it works. It works.
He further adds that the instrument carries a rich history and is worth a freaking fortune, like a cool 6 figures. But the exact value? Well, Jesse finally figured that out.
Probably 150. I don't see why you could not get that with the documents, the history.
Then Rick asked the seller, how much is he expecting from it? So he was like, I want $250,000 for it. But Rick was like, nah man, there ain't many buyers out there. They haggled and ended up settling on $90,000. It might seem like a huge profit made by the seller, and Rick, on the other hand, had to shell out a crazy amount of cash for that guitar. And can you believe it was his first time dropping that much dough on a guitar? Insane, right? But someone in the comments section went all out and said that those papers would fetch a whopping $190,000 if Joe Bonamassa got his hands on them. Another user totally agreed with him, and even said that if this guitar showed up in the right magazine, some millionaire rock star would easily drop at least $200,000 for it. But here's the main part. Did the pawn shop actually make any profit? Hell yeah, they did! Once the show aired, they wasted no time and threw that bad boy up on eBay. And guess what? They scored a whopping $110,000 for it. They ended up making a cool $20,000 profit, guys. Now that's what I call a successful hustle. Next up, we have a customer who came in trying to sell a sword that was supposedly forged by the famous Yasutsugu family, known for making weapons for badass samurais back in the day. But here's the twist. The seller looked familiar to Corey. It turned out that he had been there before to sell a trophy. You'll be thinking what kind of trophy it must be. Maybe some ancient artifact or something, right? But nope, it was actually a Grammy Award. Yes, all in excitement, Rick bought it. But later he found out that it was not allowed to be sold. Oops, I can see a great loss there. Because of that now, they had to be extra careful before dealing with this sword. They weren't sure if it was a legit samurai sword or just some ninja knockoff. The seller is a lawyer and claimed he had received the sword as payment for his legal work. Pretty cool, huh? Some users are even cracking jokes about why the guy was so willing to sell such a masterpiece. One such comment was he must have been scared of his wife's anger, whose eyes are always fixated on that sword. And if she ever gets her hands on it, she's ready to knock him off. Talk about a dangerous situation. Another user said he got robbed? Well, we have to wait to see the actual plot. Taking the lawyer's word for it, Corey decided to take the risk, and then he went ahead with the purchase. Even without having an expert to check its authenticity. I mean, let's be real, that was pretty foolish, right? I mean, who was going to check if the thing was actually legit or not? So they asked the seller how much he wanted for it, and he said $5,000. The buyers were skeptical about its condition and started throwing offers as low as $800. That's a crazy drop. But the seller fought back, saying every bit of that sword is worth the full $5,000.
If you're gonna hold my feet to the fire and make me pay as much as I can, it's gonna be $1,500.
I'll come down to 2,000.
I've got 5 of them right there.
The shop wasn't ready to pay that much without knowing more about it, so Corey went up to $1,200. He was trying to get the best deal he could, but the seller didn't budge. They went back and forth until finally the seller settled for Corey's offer of $1,500 just to get Rick off his back for that Grammy thing. After buying the sword, Corey was not at peace and was restlessly waiting for the expert who was out of town during the appraisal. Finally, he got to meet up with Mike Yamasaki, the expert, and Corey explained how he took a shot in the dark and bought the sword without knowing if it's actually worth the money. So, after taking a small glimpse at it, Mike recognized it as a samurai sword and told Corey the history of the sword. He stated that after World War II, around 3 million Japanese swords were taken out of Japan by the occupying forces. In those days, the Japanese warriors, also known as samurai, were skilled professional fighters, and the samurai sword was like their badge of honor. If you didn't have one, no way you could call yourself a samurai, man. Then Mike decided to inspect the sword and took a closer look at it.
This is the proper way to take apart a Japanese sword. They've been doing this style for centuries.
Well, after the inspection was done, the expert discovered that the sword belonged to a super important samurai with ties to Japan's imperial family, probably from the 5th generation. Now, here was the interesting part. The Yasutsugu family only worked for high-level samurai, and their signature mark, like a logo, was detailed on the handle. It's the family crest of the Tokugawa family, who ruled Japan for a couple of centuries. And if anyone tried using it without permission, they'd end up losing their heads, along with their whole damn family. Scary, right? Well, it seemed that the sword had some serious historical value. Now, the big question is, how much is it worth in today's time? After considering the condition, the expert estimated that it can be restored for around $3,000. But here's the exciting part. After the restoration and blade sharpening, Corey could potentially sell it for a whopping $15,000. That's a tenfold increase from what he paid for it initially. So there you have it. Corey took a risk, bought the sword without knowing its true value, and it turned out to be a jackpot. But that was indeed a risky game. But does it always turn out to be luck, or sometimes they just lose everything? Well, we'll see this in the next episode where a customer from Season 16 walks into the pawn shop, hoping that the shop will take his 1700s Flintlock Pistol off his hands. This thing is ancient and looks fascinating for being so damn old. But the funny part, the gun looked puke-colored.
Did you do the amazing restoration on it?
I did not.
Well, let's talk about the history of this gun. Now, the invention of the Flintlock pistol back in 1615 was a total game-changer in warfare. But here's the thing. Hector, the seller, had no idea about the pistol's origin. It was passed down to him by his father, and he's looking to score $500 for it. But Rick has some concerns. It's pretty darn obvious that this thing has been messed with. So he decided to call in his arms expert, who knows his stuff when it comes to guns. Finally, the expert Alex Kramer arrived. He's the CEO of International Military Antiques. He takes one look at the pistol and straight up calls it ugly. Ouch! Apparently, some shoddy paint job messed up the gun, and it can't even be opened properly. But hey, on the bright side, the details and engravings on the pistol are top-notch. They got this fancy style called grotesque, with all these weird-looking human and animal shapes. And the markings underneath are high quality too. Too bad the paint on the lock is so thick that they can't even see the gun maker's name. That would have helped figure out when and where it was made. Now Rick's super curious if this thing is actually worth anything. The expert takes a quick look and comes up with an estimate.
I think it would be about $1,000. Once we restore it, if I can get it functional, I think it's at least $3,000.
With that estimated value in mind, Rick decides to make an offer.
So, I will give you $150 and relieve you of your problem.
What'd you do, 250?
Damn, just $150? Even though Alex said it was worth $5,000. Rick always pulls out the excuse that it's hard to sell, and there aren't many buyers out there. After a short negotiation, the seller settles for a mere $200. I know, unbelievable and kinda unacceptable. But since the gun isn't in great working condition, I guess it was the best they could do. Rick decided to take a chance and handed the gun over for restoration. Will it hit the jackpot or lose his $200? Let's see. After a successful restoration job, Rick receives some surprising news about the gun's value. It has brought back all the original details and made it look absolutely gorgeous. And guess what? It turned out even better than expected.
With all of the engraving on the brass, that grotesque mask came out really well.
It did come out amazing.
But Alex hasn't tested it yet because he wanted Rick to witness its sight. And the best part? If this baby shoots, Rick might get a whopping $5,000. Damn. Well, let's watch if it works.
I got my headphones on, so I can't hear you.
Oh, it worked perfect!
So after successfully restoring the item and getting it in working condition, Rick could be making $5,000 on an item he bought for just $200. That's a crazy profit of $4,800. Absolutely hard to believe, right? Someone even commented that Rick straight up robbed Hector in broad daylight. Users are not holding back with their savage opinions. Well, keeping everything aside, this was indeed one of the craziest profits earned at Pawnstars shop. Moving on. In this episode, Rick bought what he thought was a fancy Polish medal from a regular customer for a whopping $6,000. He had no clue about its real value, so he called in the military antique expert Craig Gottlieb to take a look. And what do you know? It turned out that the medal wasn't even technically Polish. Talk about Rick questioning his own existence, right?
First of all, it's not technically Polish.
What do you mean, not
To clarify things for the confused Rick, the expert spilled the beans. Turns out this medal had a Russian background. Back in 1795, Poland got divided into 3 parts: Prussia, Austria, and Russia. And guess who got the largest slice? Yep, Russia. This particular order was established way back in 1325, and the white eagle is basically Poland's symbol. It's on their national emblem and everything, but they changed things up and stuck the original style of the award on top of the Russian imperial eagle, which has 2 heads. So what we got here is a Russian order, and that's what this medal represents. It's a piece of history that dates back 800 years. Pretty neat, huh? Well, neat in the sense of 800 years of Poland's struggles, constantly being conquered, reconquered, and fighting for their freedom throughout their entire history. Users also shared how this whole episode reminded them of their beloved history classes back in their school days. It brought back memories of learning about the triumphs, tragedies, dramas, and even the occasional humor that filled those lessons. With the background story out of the way, Rick finally gets down to the burning question: what's the damn thing worth? Because obviously he bought it without knowing its worth.
I took a big shot in the dark.
How big a shot?
Last $6,000
I
shot.
can sense the tension all over his body. Finally, the expert takes a closer look at the medal and starts talking about how it was probably made in St. Petersburg by a company called the House of Bolin. And guess what? They were like the main competitors to Fabergé. So we're talking about a medal of Fabergé quality here. Crazy enough to give Rick some hope. But Craig kept going on and on about how gorgeous the medal is, making Rick all anxious and begging him to stop teasing and spill the beans about its worth. And finally, he does. Aren't you curious just like me?
30 to 40 grand. $30,000 to $40,000. That's incredible.
Damn, the medal is valued at around $30,000 to $40,000? That's awesome. And it definitely brought a big wide smile on Rick's face. But hold up. Sadly, Craig has some serious concerning news for him. Apparently, the market for this specific metal is pretty thin, meaning there's not much chance for Rick to sell it easily. Talk about a check he can't cash. But hey, Craig's always got a solution up his sleeve. So fast forward to a later date when Craig visited the pawn shop to meet Rick and brought with him some exciting news. He got in contact with a guy in Germany who has a box for this metal, has the ribbon for it, and even the breast star. It's all part of a set, you see, but there's a big hole in the guy's box, specifically for the neck order. And Craig just knew that he finally found a potential buyer for the metal, someone who needs to complete their set. Now, both the parties are ready to strike a deal. Craig offers him $30,000 for the item, but as we all know, Rick, being the savage businessman, tried to negotiate for more, even though deep down he knew that's the best he could get.
An hour last time you were in.
I'm sorry. Well, I'm just flipping this, right?
Okay.
I'll give you $30,000.
I'm trying to figure out a way to complain about that price.
I'm coming out swinging here because I've got it pre-sold, and I'm not making a ton here. $30,000.
But Craig was fixed with the price. Obviously, Rick is not satisfied, and you won't believe what he asked next.
$30,000, you buy me dinner?
Why not?
Write me a check.
Can you believe it? Well, eventually, Rick settles for the $30,000 offer, which is 5 times the amount he paid for it initially. Talk about a great deal. With a free meal thrown in too. Gotta love those perks. One person made a comment praising the honesty of Craig, noting how he offered a price range for the metal that matched its actual value of $30,000 to $40,000. Despite knowing that Rick had only paid $6,000 for it, Craig could have easily offered a lower price, like $12,000, and made a huge profit. But instead, he respected Rick and still managed to make some money while being fair. While some may get shy or move away from the risks involved, the Pawnstars welcomes them as an integral part of their journey. It is this audacity that sets them apart, enabling them to grab opportunities that others might brush off as too risky or uncertain. So, which of these do you think was the massive moneymaker on Pawnstars? Let me know in the comments down below, and don't forget to subscribe for more such videos, and I'll see you in another one.